Revising. So in this video we're going to go over how to revise your essay. The word revising means take another look. So revising is best done after a brief break. Set aside your writing and return to it later with fresh eyes. Also enlist the fresh eyes of another reader, whether a roommate, a classmate, or someone at the writing center. Revising is all about getting perspective. Of course, once you have perspective, you need to figure out how to make improvements. This chapter provides numerous strategies for focusing on the global traits of your writing: ideas, organization, and voice. The changes you make should improve your work significantly, perhaps even reshaping it. When revising, first look at the big picture. Take it all in. Determine whether the content is interesting, informative, and worth sharing. Note any gaps or soft spots in your line of thinking. Ask yourself, how can you improve what you have done so far? The information that follows will help you address the whole paper issues such as this. Revisit the rhetorical situation. Just as the rhetorical situation helped you to set your direction in writing, it can help you make corrections. Think about each part of the rhetorical situation. Consider your role. How are you coming across in this draft? Do you sound authoritative, engaged, knowledgeable, confident? How do you want to come across? Think about your subject. Have you stated a clear focus? Have you supported it with a variety of details? Have you explored the subject fully? Remember your purpose. Are you trying to analyze, describe, explain, propose? Does the writing succeed? Do the ideas promote your purpose? Does your organization support the purpose? Is your writing voice helpful in achieving your purpose? Check the form. Have you created writing that matches the form that your instructor created? Have you taken advantage of the form, including graphics or other media if appropriate? Consider your audience. Have you captured their attention and interest? Have you provided them the information they need to understand your writing? Have you considered their values, needs, and opinions and used them to connect? Think about the context. Is the piece of writing the correct length and level of seriousness for the assignment? Is it on schedule? How does it match up to what others are doing? Writing with sources. Make sure that your sources work well for each part of your essay. Choose sources that reflect well on you. Illuminate the subject with accurate information. Help you achieve your purpose, whether to inform, persuade, or reflect. Choose sources that work well within the form and can be appropriately credited. Choose sources that are seen as authoritative by the audience. And choose sources that are timely and credible in the context. Consider your overall approach. Sometimes it's better to start fresh if your writing contains stretches of uninspired ideas. Consider a fresh start if your first draft shows one of these problems. The topic is worn out. The approach is stale. Your voice is predictable. The draft sounds boring. The essay is formulaic. Writing with sources. Test the balance of reasoning and sources. Make sure your draft is not thin on source material, but also make sure that the source material does not dominate the conversation. Before diving into source material within a paragraph or section of your paper, flesh out your thinking more fully. Offer reasoning that elaborates the claim. As you present evidence from source material, build on it by explaining what it means. Evidence doesn't typically speak for itself. Through analysis, synthesis, illustration, contrast, and other means, you need to show how or why your sources advance your thesis. After you have presented evidence that elaborates and supports your idea, extend your thoughts by addressing the reader's "so what? Why does this matter?" skepticism. The writing process. Revising helps you turn your first draft into a more complete, thoughtful piece of writing. Prepare to revise. Once you've completed the first draft, set it aside for a few days until you can look at it objectively and make the needed changes. If you drafted on paper, photocopy the draft. If you drafted on computer, print your paper double-spaced, then make changes with a good pencil or colored pen. If you prefer revising on the computer, consider using your software editing program. In all cases, save your first draft for reference. When revising, focus on the big picture, the overall strength of the ideas, generation, organization, and voice. Check your thesis, focus, or theme. Check the overall design of your writing. Make sure the ideas move smoothly and logically from one point to the next. Does your essay build effectively? Do you shift directions cleanly? Fix structural problems in one of these ways. Reorder material. Cut information that doesn't support the thesis. Add details. Rewrite parts that seem unclear. Improve links between transitions. Voice is your personal presence on the page, the tone and attitude that others hear when reading your work. In other words, voice is the between-the-lines message your readers get whether you want them or not. When revising, make sure that the tone of your message matches your purpose, whether it is serious, playful, or satiric. Don't pay undue attention to spelling, grammar, and punctuation at this early stage in the process. So when you do your revision, there are two stages. So here they're talking about the first stage of revision. You revise globally. You make sure that your essay structure globally throughout your entire essay makes sense. So in the first part of looking over your essay, we don't look at grammar. We just make sure that the entire paper makes sense. We make sure that the paper has one central idea. We make sure that all of the body paragraphs refer back to the thesis. Then we make sure that all the supporting sentences refer back to the topic sentences. And then we make sure that all the topic sentences refer back to the thesis statement. And in that way, we make sure that we have essay coherence. And we also make sure that we tie our ideas together with transition words and that we use sentence variety. And so right now, you're just thinking about your voice. And then after that, after you check for your essay structure and you say, okay, the essay structure is solid. Then you check to make sure that you have the proper tone for your audience. Are you writing for friends and family? Are you writing to your boss? Are you writing to the general public? Are you writing to other experts? And so after you check for essay structure globally, then you check for audience, voice, tone, and diction. And you make sure that your paper is not too formal. It's not too formal for your friends, not too informal for your boss, and it's not too difficult to read for beginners, and then not too boring and too easy to read for experts. So that's the second part of revision. Actually, this is still the first part where you're checking over the entire paper to make sure that you have good essay structure, good tone, good purpose, and that it fits your audience. Okay, so once you're done with that part of revision, which I call simply revision, then the second half of rewriting your paper focuses on grammar, punctuation, APA, and that's known as editing and proofreading. So we always look at our essay structure first before we do the editing, before we do the grammar. So that's two different parts. And so here they're still talking about the first part, revising for ideas and organization. In other words, they're still talking in this book, they're still talking about the first part where you're still checking for essay structure. As you review your draft for content, make sure the ideas are fully developed and the organization is clear. So here they're talking about make sure you have a thesis statement with matching topic sentences and that you have one main idea for the entire essay. From your main claim or thesis to your reason and your evidence, strengthen your thinking and sequencing. Review the ideas in your writing. Make sure that each point is logical, complete, and clear. And make sure you have a clear thesis statement with a topic, opinion, and reasons. Good writing has structure. It leads readers logically and clearly from one point to the next. When revising for organization, consider 4 areas: the overall plan, the opening, the flow of ideas, and the closing. Overall plan. Look closely at the sequence of ideas or events that you share. Does the sequence advance your thesis? Do the points build effectively? Are there gaps in the support or points that stray from your original purpose? If you find such ideas, consider the following actions. Refine the focus or emphasis by rearranging material within the text. Fill in the gaps with new material. Go back to your planning notes. Delete material that wanders away from your purpose or your thesis. Use additional or different method of organization. For example, if you are comparing two subjects, add depth to your analysis by contrasting them as well. If you are describing a complex subject, show the subject more clearly and fully by distinguishing and classifying its parts. What is the best method of organization for your essay? The writing you are doing will usually determine the choice. As you know, a personal narrative is often organized by time. However, you can combine and customize methods to develop a writing idea. For example, within a comparison essay, you may do some describing or classifying. So opening ideas. So here there's going to start, now we're going to start with the hook. So how do we hook the reader? Reread your opening paragraph. Is the hook organized effectively? Does it engage readers or establish a direction for your writing and express your thesis or focus? The original opening doesn't build the original opening below doesn't build to a compelling thesis statement, but the revised version engages the reader more. So, flow of ideas. Look closely at the beginning and endings of each paragraph. Have you connected your thoughts clearly? And so make sure that all of your flow of ideas, you could use transition words in between paragraphs in order to make your paragraphs flow more clearly, like first, second, third. Reread your closing paragraph. So here we're doing the conclusion. And so in the conclusion, you always restate your thesis statement, it's the first sentence, and then you summarize your essay without adding new information. So in your conclusion, reread your closing paragraph. Do you offer an effective summary, reassert your main point in a fresh way, and provide readers with food for thought as they leave your writing? Or is your ending abrupt, repetitive, or directionless? And so you want your reader to be satisfied and have closure. So to generate fresh ideas for your closing, free write answers to questions like these. Why is the topic important to me? What should my readers have learned? Why should this issue matter to readers? What evidence or appeal will help readers remember my message and act on it? So they're talking about ethos, logos, and pathos, which appeal. Okay, so that's they put that in a different lesson. How does the topic relate to broader issues in society, history, or life? Revising for voice and style. Generally, readers more fully trust writing that speaks in an informed voice and a clear, natural style. To develop an informed voice, make sure that your details are correct and complete. To develop a clear style, make sure that your writing is well organized and unpretentious. Check the level of commitment. Consider how to and what degree your writing shows that you care about the topic and reader. So this I will go over because a lot of students think that if they use ChatGPT, then their writing is perfect. But the problem with ChatGPT is that the students tend to lose their voice, lose their passion, because one thing that ChatGPT does not have, it doesn't have your passion. It doesn't show that you care about the topic. ChatGPT doesn't know about your personal experiences, and why you're interested. Okay, so here I will go over somebody that lacks voice and someone that has a sincere voice. And if you use too much ChatGPT, you will end up with an essay that lacks voice and you want to have an essay that has a personal, sincere voice. Now, even though this particular chapter was, this textbook was written before ChatGPT, but this lesson is still valid so that you can learn how can I preserve my voice while still using ChatGPT. Okay, so here's the original passage. In this passage, they did not use ChatGPT. I want to make that clear. But it does teach the lesson of how you can write something with no voice and something with voice. So here is a student pre-ChatGPT learning how to write in a personal, sincere voice. And this is for a narrative essay usually. Cemeteries can teach us a lot about history. They make history seem more real. There is an old grave of a Revolutionary War veteran in the Union Grove Cemetery. So that lacks voice. Revised version with personal, sincere voice. I've always had a special feeling for cemeteries. It's hard to explain any further than that, except to say history never seems quite as real as it does when I walk among many old gravestones. One day I discovered the grave of a Revolutionary War veteran. So here you add your voice to it. And now you're asking me, well, Professor H, you're always telling us we got to write it in third person case. Now, how can we add a personal, sincere voice if we're writing it in third person case? Well, you could do it this way. So instead of saying I, you could say, this author has always had a special feeling for cemeteries. This author means you, in other words, the author. It's hard to explain any further than that, except to say history never seems quite as real as it does when this author walks among many old gravestones. One day, this author discovered the grave of, so you can substitute I with this author in order to maintain your personal, sincere voice. So if you want to add your experiences into your paper, you can use the this author way of third person case. Check the intensity of your writing. All writing, including academic writing, is enriched by an appropriate level of intensity or even passion. In the original passage below, the writer's concern for the topic is unclear because the piece sounds neutral, a la ChatGPT. In contrast, the revised version exudes energy, a la you rewrite your essay. If you did use ChatGPT, you still need to rewrite your essay so that it shows passion, so pathos. Remember, when we write our essays, we want ethos, pathos, logos. Pathos meaning appeal to emotion. And if you copy and paste stuff directly from ChatGPT, you are lacking pathos. That means when people read your essay, they fall asleep. And that's not the effect you want. You don't want your essay to lack feeling and energy. So here, the original passage, the DREAM Act would make a difference for people. It just takes a long time to get any bill through Congress. The bill probably will never get approved. Instead of passing the DREAM Act, the country will probably just deport high school students from other countries. Revised passage. Here you express real feeling. Given such debates, it might be a long time before the bill becomes law, thereby dashing the dreams of nearly 65,000 high school students like Maria, who can't wait another year because they may already be in deportation proceedings. We need to step up and educate our representatives and senators about the importance of passing the DREAM Act on its own, instead of including the bill along with CIR. We need to urge them to debate and approve the DREAM Act now, thereby making Maria's dreams and the dreams of thousands of students like her a reality. And this is a very controversial topic, so let's put aside politics for a second and let's just focus on writing style. And so the writing style of the revised passage expresses real emotion, whereas the original passage lacks emotion. That's all you need to remember. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, whether you're for or against the DREAM Act. Then you're saying, well, Professor H, you're always telling us we can't use first-person case in a research paper. So therefore, you could still use this author, okay? You could still say, given such debates, it might be a long time before the bill becomes law, thereby dashing the dreams of the students like Maria. And then instead of saying we need to step up to educate you would say that Americans need to step up and educate their representatives. Or this author believes that Americans need to educate their representatives and senators. So you can still, and this author believes, or this author thinks that the people need to legislate the DREAM Act in order to make the dream of Maria's dream of graduating come true. So you could still use this author instead of I, my, we, our, in order to make you could sound professional, yet still express real feeling. You get to have it both ways. You express passion, you express your feelings while still sounding professional. That's the key. That's a thin line that you walk, professional yet passionate. And then that way you don't sound like ChatGPT, in which you lack feeling and energy. So I spent a lot of time on this particular trait because we're in the age of AI. All right, see. So develop an academic style. Most college writing requires an academic style. Such a style isn't stuffy. You're not trying to impress readers with $10 words, ChatGPT. Rather, you are using language that facilitates a thoughtful, engaged discussion of the topic. To choose the best words for such a conversation, consider the issues that follow. In some academic writing, personal pronouns are acceptable. Such is the case in informal writing, such as reading responses, personal essays involving narration, description, and reflection, and opinion editorial essays written for a broad audience. In addition, I is correctly used in academic writing rooted in personal research, sometimes called an I search paper. Generally, however, avoid using I, we, you in traditional academic writing. The concept instead is to focus on the topic itself and let your attitude be revealed indirectly. A.E.B. White puts it, to achieve style, begin by affecting none. That is, begin by placing yourself in the background. That's why I said, say this author. So that way the focus is on the topic and not on you. You also have to get rid of you and your, because you're not supposed to, in a research paper, talk directly to the reader, because that sounds like you're sermonizing. It's like you're pointing the finger. Uncle Sam wants you, with the finger pointed at you. No. So here is the difference. I really think the problem of the homeless in Chicago is serious, given the number of people who are dying, and as I know from my experience where I grew up. And so here, this sounds too conversational, especially if you're writing for your teacher or possibly for your boss. And so instead, you want your paper to sound more objective yet passionate. Remember, you're walking that thin line between objectiveness, passion, professionalism. And in order to do that, you have to develop your own style. And this takes practice. So homelessness in Chicago often leads to death. This fact demands the attention of more than lawyers and social workers. All citizens must address the problems of their suffering neighbors. So here, you're able to be professional, yet still emote passion. Use the pronoun one carefully in academic prose. When it means a person, one can lead to a stilted style if overused. In addition, the pronoun there, a plural pronoun, should not be used with one. So you need to choose one or the other. So if I say one should study so that one can get a good grade, so you stick with one and one. Or you would say, when a person studies hard, he or she will get good grades. Or when people study hard, they will get good grades. Those are the three ways in which, well, there are other ways, but those are the three ways that you can put your essay into third person case, he, she, they, the reporter's case. So that way you could still sound passionate, yet still sound objective. Technical jargon. Technical terms and jargon, insider words, can be the specialized vocabulary of a subject, a discipline, a profession, or a social group. As such, jargon can be difficult for outsiders. Here is the place where you have to take into consideration your audience. If your audience is a bunch of beginners, if you use too much jargon, your beginner audience is going to go, huh? Like that, right? So you always have to take into account your audience. If your audience is a bunch of experts, then you can use plenty of jargon, okay? So use technical terms to communicate with people within the profession or discipline as a kind of shorthand. In other words, if you're giving a speech to other experts of your field, then feel free to throw in all the jargon. But even then, even if you're speaking to experts, you still can't fill it up with so much jargon that you sound stilted, like you're just being so pretentious. So be careful that such jargon doesn't evolve into meaningless buzzwords and catchphrases. Avoid jargon when writing for readers outside your profession or discipline. Use simpler terms and define technical terms that must be used. Now here is where ChatGPT can really help you and really excel, okay? ChatGPT, you could put in all this jargon. If someone uses too much jargon, cut and paste that entire jargon paragraph into ChatGPT, and then you ask ChatGPT, now explain this in English that a 5-year-old can understand. Explain this in high school English. Explain this that a teenager would understand or a 12-year-old would understand. And then ChatGPT will then take away all the jargon and give it to you in really easy to. So here in this part, yes, ChatGPT is really great at summarizing and making complex ideas sound easy. Okay, so if you're in a science, studying sciences of any kind, that's where ChatGPT is not very good at putting passion or something into an essay. ChatGPT's essays are so boring, you'll fall asleep. But it's really good at simplifying big ideas. So here's something that's too technical. Bin Dowser's power washer delivers 2200 psi PR, runs off standard AC lines, comes with 100 feet HD synthetic rubber tubing, and features variable pulsation options through 3 adjustable SS tips. And Bin Dowser, and so then you would put in into ChatGPT this technical thing, and then even if this one is still too complicated, you would say, no, that's still too complicated. Even if it comes out with something simple, but you still don't understand, even when they simplify it, you can then tell ChatGPT, simplify it even more, and simplify it even more, until finally, oh, I get it, after maybe 10 times, if you don't know anything about whatever the topic is. You could do, that's what's great about it. And ChatGPT's not going to laugh at you. Not going to go, ah ha ha ha, look how many times it took you to understand the simple topic that anybody would. That's the fun part about ChatGPT. It doesn't laugh at you, okay? Nobody's going to know that it took you a gazillion times to understand one little paragraph that everybody else understood. Okay, when you go to class and you understand the concept and you look just as expert as everybody else, and no one will even know you use ChatGPT if you don't tell them, Anyway, level of formality. Most academic writing, especially research papers, literary analysis, lab reports, and argumentative essays, should meet the standards of formal English. Formal English is characterized by a serious tone, careful attention to word choice, longer and more complex sentences reflecting complex thinking, strict adherence to traditional conventions of grammar, mechanics, and punctuation, and avoidance of contractions. How many times have I told you to write out your contractions? So instead of saying, I can't go to the party, you would write out, I cannot go to the party. That way you sound more formal and respectful for your boss and your teacher. Remember, always think about your audience when you're writing. Formal English modeled in this sentence is worded correctly and carefully so that it can withstand repeated readings without seeming tiresome, sloppy, or cute. You may write other papers, personal essays, commentaries, journals, and reviews in which informal English is appropriate. Informal English is characterized by a personal tone, the occasional use of popular expressions, shorter sentences with slightly looser syntax, contractions, and personal references like I, we, you, but it still adheres to basic conventions. Informal English sounds like one person talking to another person. In other words, informal English is conversational English. This is like when you write the way you talk. That's informal English. So informal English is when people write exactly the way they talk. So if I have a really poor grammar and I go, I ain't from around here. Where is you from? Okay, that is informal English because some people do talk that way. So informal English sounds like one person talking to another person. It's the type of language that you're reading now. It sounds comfortable and real, not affected or breezy. Oh, and yes, ChatGPT can sometimes sound very affected or breezy, and ChatGPT uses too many ornate words because it doesn't know any better. It's just a machine. That's why if you use ChatGPT, you can't just simply use the output, cut and paste it and hand it in. You still have to look it over to make sure that it doesn't sound too robotic, uses too many ornate words. So in academic writing, generally avoid slang, words considered outside standard English, because slang is like a fad. It's familiar to a few people and then sometimes insulting. Another aspect about slang is that it changes meaning from generation to generation. So for example, in the 1940s or 50s or 60s, if you remember the old Christmas songs, they used the word gay. And in the 40s and 50s, in Christmas songs, I can't think of any, gay meant have a gay time, meant have a good time, have a fun time at a party, being with your friends, talking, laughing. That's it. That was the end part of being gay. Gay also meant that you're a happy person. Look at that person. He's really gay. That means that person is really, really happy, never sad. It had nothing to do with then. Several generations later, we have gay, which has totally different meaning, okay? So that's why we don't use slang, and gay is an example of it can be slang, but a better example is groovy, okay? Groovy in my generation meant, oh, that was a groovy movie, or that was a groovy show. That means it was cool. And nowadays I believe the young people call it dope. It's really dope. And in my day, dope was something that a drug that you took, okay? So that's why we don't use slang, because it changes, the meaning changes from generation to generation. And so you want what you're writing for everybody to understand it. So avoid slang. It's just too conversational. And then unnecessary qualifiers. Using qualifiers such as mostly, often, likely, or tends to is an appropriate strategy for developing defendable claims in argumentative writing. However, when you overqualify your ideas or add intensifiers like truly or really, the result is insecurity, the impression that you lack confidence in your ideas. The cure, say what you mean and mean what you say. Insecure. I totally and completely agree with the new security measures at sporting events, but that's only my opinion. Secure. I agree with the new security measures at sporting events. Each academic discipline has its own vocabulary and its own vocabulary resources. Such resources include glossaries and dictionaries. Check your library for vocabulary resources in your discipline. And know when to use, this is a really long chapter, isn't it? I think I've gone past 30 minutes. Know when to use passive voice. Most verbs can either be in the active or passive voice. When a verb is active, the sentence's subject performs the action. When the verb is passive, the subject is acted upon. Active voice. If you can't attend a meeting, notify Richard by Thursday. Passive. If a meeting can't be attended by you, Richard must be notified by Thursday. Weakness is a passive voice. The passive voice tends to be wordy and sluggish because the verb action is directed backwards, not ahead. In addition, passive constructions tend to be impersonal, making people disappear. The sound system can now be used to listen in on sessions in the therapy room. Parents can now be helped by having constructive one-on-one communication with children. So when you write your essay, it's better to use active voice because then the subject does the action. We usually use passive voice in science writing, where you're not putting where the focus is on what you're doing and not on the subject. So we do use it in science. Using the passive voice isn't wrong. In fact, the passive voice has some important uses. When you need to be tactful, say in a bad newsletter. If you wish to stress the object or person acted upon, such as in science, you want to focus on the experiment. If the actual actor is understood, unknown, or unimportant, once again, like in science, you will focus on your experiment. Avoid using passive voice to hide responsibility. For example, an instructor who says, "Your assignments could not be graded because of scheduling difficulties," might be trying to evade the truth. "I did not finish grading your assignments because I was watching CSI." Oh, that's funny. Academic writing must be free of plagiarism. Check that you have clearly indicated which material in your draft. That's why I always tell students, if you're in doubt, cite the source. Even if you summarize a source, you still have to cite the source. Because if you don't cite your sources correctly, Turnitin is going to mark it as plagiarism, and then your plagiarism score will go through the roof and you get a 0. So I will address paragraph issues in the next video. So right now in this video I talked about a lot of stuff about revision, global, how to look things globally, how to always consider your audience, and also your passive voice, as well as first, second, and third person voice, and tone, as well as purpose. So right now we're still in the first half of the revision. In other words, looking at it globally. And so I will talk more about globally, and as this chapter advances, it will start to talk more and more about grammar. But right now it's still doing essay organization. So I will go over that in the next video. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the Professor H Writing channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at any time.